Hey everybody, Jim Salmons here, and welcome to the Kayak Fishing Show live. As always, brought to you by Ballast Point Brewing Company, though I'm not having one today, and all of our other great sponsors that are scrolling down there across the bottom that have helped us make this show for the last 12 years. Couple things going on. I've noticed this week, and it may be because I hit a button, that we had a whole lot of new people join the Kayak Fishing Show group page, which I'm pretty stoked about, because if you belong to the group, you are more likely to be notified when we are going live. So welcome to the group page. Feel free to post things on there. If you are commenting from that group page, you do need to make sure that you give the page permission to use your name. Because if you just post a comment during this live broadcast from the group page, it's just going to say Facebook user. So you got to make sure you give that thing permission so I know who I'm talking to. It's been super windy. I don't know if anybody watched the Dodgers-Giants playoff game last night. You saw how windy it is up there. I'm a couple hours south of there, and it's just as windy down here. So there's been no getting on the water. We had planned on going hoop netting, going for lobster, and it's just too stinking windy. So small craft advisories and all that. I can't get out and kayak right now anyway because the bum shoulder still. I did get an MRI, saw that it shows I have a tear in my shoulder. So I get to go see the doctor on Thursday and see what he suggests we do, whether it's surgery or whatever. But I'm tired of not being able to lift my arm. I have to use my right arm to lift my beer. So I'm really stoked about this. I have been asking our guest on here. I have asked him to be a guest on here so many times, but he works so much and our schedules just never line up. One of my favorite guys to fish with, Chris Funk, was on this trip with me. He invited us to come to the Okefenokee Swamp, kept telling us what an awesome place it is. I mean, he's so passionate about the place and kept inviting us to come, and we finally managed to get out and fish with him. We had fished with him before down in Florida, and we always had a good time, but this is a special place to him, and I could see why after this shoot. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring up my good buddy, Chris Funk Daddy. What's up, Chris?
You're doing well, sir. Good to see you.
You too. Like I said, I'm glad we could finally make this work. We get you on here. Oh, people, remind me if I actually mute my mic. I'm having some audio issues right now with my computer, so I might have to mute my mic to keep from having feedback. And then, knowing me, I'll forget to turn it back on. So if that happens while the video is playing, just send me a message. Say, Jim, turn on your mic. So anyway, Chris, before we get to the Okefenokee Swamp and get all that down, you've had a couple things going on lately that I wanted to talk about. Hey, you did a pretty cool walkthrough video on the new Take Two tandem by Jackson Kayak.
Yes,
so
sir.
I want to talk about that a little bit. I really want to talk about your little adventure you had with our buddies Jeff Little and Jameson Redding, where you took those Take Twos down river for a multi-day, like 50-mile paddle trip. So I saw a few brief things about that, and I saw Jeff just posted a full-length video about the trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't had a chance to see that, but I have heard about this trip. So it was quite the adventure, right?
Yes, sir, it was. We knew that it was going to be a pretty good adventure just for the distance, 50 miles in anything. And we knew we were only doing 2 nights, 3 days. So we knew we had our work cut out for us. And of course, going into it, Jameson says, well, we got to try these boats out. And I'm like, all right, I'm a glutton for punishment. Bring it, So we loaded them down, and way too much gear as per usual between camera gear and camping gear. And yes, sir. So I was actually sitting in the tandem position, but had all the gear up front. So I had all the weight of a tandem person, but no extra motor up front paddling it. So
right.
But I mean, the boats did great. They really did. It was I was super impressed. Of course, being one that's paddled all of our bigger boats, the tuna and the DT, which I still have the DT and I love the DT. And that's to me always the I guess the one mark that I'm looking at. Can it do what that boat does, you know? And but I was very impressed with the way it handled it. But you know, I guess hearing the story that during the time we were there, we had a lot of rain and the water was already moving pretty good. But it rained on us, which dummy me left my rain gear in the van when the shuttle came to take us to the. So I had no rain gear.
Are you kidding?
I know, sir. Yes, sir. I had no rain gear with me, which was, you know, I had one bag that had my rain gear. That's the one bag that got left on the van. So, but I did have a tarp, and thankfully I brought a tarp, and my buddy Robert brought a tarp. And while we were out, you know, it rained. But we knew that you know, it was more just wet and annoying for us. I mean, this is Alabama. It rains every day, you know, in the summertime. But we decided to pull up on our high ground that day, and thankfully the guide, the run that runs the outdoor center there, Coosa River Adventures, he said, make sure you put your boat higher than your tent, just in case, because I mean it's a dam release area, so you may have water come through there at any given time. And so we drug far enough away from the river, we thought, and used the boats actually to hold the tarp up. I mean, we had tarp poles, and we're using the boats as basically as stakes. We just had all the ropes tied to all four corners with that, and had our tents, all three of us, three different tents underneath there. Well, at 6:30 in the morning, Jeff Little rolled over and said, "We got water." And I mean, that's all he said. Immediately, you hear, you know, tent zippers going off and water splashing, and we just run. And it was all of us jumped out in our underbreeches, and at that time, I mean, we didn't realize it, but our tents were floating, and it was just, we were being held in place by the boats basically. Well, 5 minutes after we get out of the tents, the boats raise up and actually pull into the tents, and the whole canopy collapses over the tents, and the whole thing starts floating down the river. And we're shucking, trying to pull things up to higher ground. And every time we get to higher ground and turn back to get more gear, you look back, and that you just put on dry ground is now sitting in the water. And I mean, it was coming.
Do they give you no kind of
there is no
warning that they're going to be releasing more water?
You got to think at this point now, we're 20. The first day we ran 13 miles, and the second day we ran 20 miles. So now we're 35 miles downstream, you know, because we put him a little bit below the dam. So we're a good distance below the hydro. And so you're not going to hear a siren. You know, we actually talked about safety stuff that in the future, if we're in that type of my buddy Robert Grigg, he sourced a water alarm that's much like you would put around your hot water heater. Runs on AA batteries, has 110 decibel alarm. He said, dude, if we ever do another river trip, I'm taking this, and we'll just set it down below the tent. When it hits water, you know, that alarm's going to go off. But the main thing was, when we thankfully, everyone had level heads. We got up, everybody checked on everybody, and once we had people were fine and secured boats, we knew everything else was just going to be either wet gear or lost gear. But our boats were the lifeline out of there. Once people were fine, we realized that the boats were the priority. That was people and boats were it. And after that, it was get as much gear as you can. And thankfully, those huge boats, I mean, it's an aircraft carrier, man. That Take Two, I just started shucking gear on top of mine and Jameson's. It didn't matter whose gear it was. It just went on top of the boats. And then we kept pulling up. And, you know, if you look at his video and my videos out there on my channel as well, you could see the little trees that were on one side of our tents are now underneath the water on the other side of where our tents were at. It got, I think it ended up for us, it went from 9 feet on surface level to 17 feet while we were there. And then we actually, that last ride out was 13 miles. And there were so many strainers along the river. We said for safety, we weren't even going to tempt the fish, just get in the middle of the river, ride it out safely. We'll get to the end and call it an adventure. And that's what we did. It was just, it wasn't safe to even, you know, attempt to try. So it's kind of one of them adult things, which sometimes really sucks, but it was better just to get out and get safe. And since we already had one pretty close call, let's not make it another. And so we just rode out with it, and everything was soaked, and I think everybody lost a little bit of gear, but it wasn't too bad. But it could have been much worse.
So if anybody wants to see these videos, where would they look?
Jeff Little's channel, which has, of course, excellent information on it. And my channel is Chris Funk, the Feral One, like just Feral, kind of like a wild hog. But Chris Funk,
Right.
the Feral One on YouTube. That's where
I think Jeff
mine's
Little
at.
is what, the little stuff?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And both
And I
of
know
us have
I saw
videos.
him talking about, identifying strainers and all that. And, because I've run into trouble on a river. I mean, rivers are a whole different animal.
Yes, sir.
And, there's a lot to be learned from other people's experiences. So I'm glad you guys all got out safe.
Yes, sir.
The boat itself, the Take Two. Like I said, I saw you and your bride did a walkthrough video on it. I noticed, it's a big boat. You're talking about how much gear you could put on it, because I saw with you and your wife on it, it was riding really high in the water. So obviously
it amazed me how shallow that boat ran with me and conservative 200 pounds of gear. So with me at 200 and the gear at 200, that boat drafted shallower than our OG big rig, which to me floated on wet grass. I mean, right. I was going over stuff and I'm like, I'm going to hit it. Nope. It never even touched it. It amazed me how shallow that boat drafted, which has a whole lot of really good possibilities for them other, shallow belly crawling redfish that I like to chase. So
yeah, well, I can see, much like a canoe, you're not getting all your stuff down inside of it. You're just dry bags and strapping stuff down.
And with gear tracks from one end to the other, I had stuff piled on it from one side to the other and tied over, and that boat could have rolled, 5 or 6 times and I wouldn't have lost anything. The only thing I lost was because it was sitting outside of the boat when the flood came.
Well, folks, like I said, I kind of skimmed over the walkthrough video you did of it. Jameson's did a walkthrough video of it. I did notice one point where you were like standing inside the boat on the inside rail.
Yes, sir.
And it is. You're looking for
I had to actually stand up on the rail to get it to flip. I was standing to try to make it flip, and it would not flip. So I actually had to step up onto the gunnel to make it roll over to do my flip and flip back over video that I did. I wanted to see what it would take.
And that was something I wanted to ask you about as well. Let's see, I got a comment popped up there. Liam Young, thanks for joining us over on Kayak Fishing Tales. So, folks, if this is new to you, we have the YouTube channel Kayak Fishing Tales. It's a big boat. I personally am not a fan of the route you guys go to flip your boats back over. I don't, because a lot of people can't get up on a boat.
Right.
So I was just curious if you guys tried the reach under, pull towards you, and push it away from you.
I tried everything that I knew to do, Mr. Jim. That boat, when I literally got on top of it, which I understand your concern. I got on top of that boat and on my knees and was leaning back with my fingers in the scupper trying to get it to come over, and I could not physically get the boat to move.
Okay, but like I said, did you try that underneath it?
And pull
it towards you and push it over?
It just kept pushing me straight down in the water. Just straight down.
It is a lot of boat, a lot of weight. So I've never had to do it with such a big boat. So I was just kind of curious if you tried that, because I don't like pulling them over, because a lot of times I've had people do that and they'll pull the boat over and then it'll hit them in the head.
Right. Yes, sir. And that's the one thing, like with the strap, we did a rescue using the straps. I did a video with Angie where I put a strap around my leg and across my leg and across her boat so that she could step up into it. If I was going to do that big boat and I could not physically climb, I would use a strap and throw it across the boat where it was down in the water, where you could step up into it like a stirrup and use that to help out to get up to the boat and get off of it. But because having that strap like a stirrup in the water really helps I've had special needs people that I've helped to get back in boats. I've had ladies that had zero upper body strength. My bride, who can enter a boat on her own, but she tends to get bruised up and stuff. And you got to take care of your women. So I try to do my best. And having that stirrup, using that strap like a stirrup, has helped to get so many people out of the water, and make it a whole lot easier on them. So I try to keep a strap pretty handy, but in this boat, it's a necessity to me.
Yeah.
You better keep one handy.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. There is a product called the Rescue Strap, which is basically that, self-contained in a pouch. You just keep it attached to the side handle of your boat out of the way. But like I said, you can do it with a tie down strap, a good old NRS strap. But the Rescue Strap's a little cleaner setup, but whatever works when you need it.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah. So again, you guys, watch the videos that Chris did on this and on how to do that rescue, because you can learn a lot. And I know it's kind of the same animal when you look at some of these big boats like the PAs, and some of those boats are just so stinking wide, getting them flipped back over.
Yeah, like you said, almost never will flip. Yeah, they almost never will flip, but there's always that one chance.
Well, that's it. The thing is, and what people don't always understand is, if a boat has a lot of initial stability, it generally doesn't have a whole lot of secondary stability. Mm-hmm. So once it breaks that point, it's gone. There's no pulling your hip under you or nothing like that. And quite honestly, most of the peddlers out there don't have those skills down anyway, because it's just a different animal. So it's good to know, and I appreciate the fact that you did those videos, and Jeff, and shared your adventure. Got another person, Barbara Keeney. How are you? Yes, Barbara, you actually gave it permission, so it is saying your name. We're not getting a whole lot of comments today for some reason. I don't usually
maybe I'm talking too much.
Yeah. Maybe. I honestly have been out of the habit. The last videos I did were actually kind of memorial videos for our good friend Omar.
That was sad. I'm sorry to hear about that, sir.
Yeah, so that was kind of sad. So trying to get back in the swing of things, and of course this whole shoulder thing is kind of keeping me down. So anyway, let's talk about the Okefenokee, because it's a place that you love
very much. So.
I mean, you literally did, like, you guys got to come here. You got to come here. You got to come here.
I probably begged a little bit. I may have been a little bit beggy, but yes, sir. I was hoping y'all would.
And it didn't disappoint. I mean, it was, I wouldn't say the fishing was on fire by any means, but it was such a cool place.
And I said that. I said usually, and you're like, dude, you got to understand, quit saying that the fishing's off, because this is a good. And I said, but you don't understand. There are days that you'll come out here and you'll bruise your ribs from hook sets and tear your shoulder. I literally carry a spinning rod and a bait casting rod so I can swap shoulders when I set the hook, just because I'll be stove up from setting the hook so much. But if the water's high, it's you earn. I carried my bride down there for the first time this past spring, and she earned her fish. I mean, she fought for them, but she earned them. But it was not the normal, go down there. I mean, I've been down there when you could throw a brick and they'll eat it, and it's amazing fishing. And then you go down there and you've got to work for them. So I guess that's one of the beauties of it. It's not just a fishing destination. There's so much history and flora, fauna, critters, you name it, to look at down there. And there's something for everybody, whether you're a birder, whether you enjoy seeing animals, whether you enjoy carnivorous plants and old growth trees and things like that. There's so much that's there that's more than just a fishing destination. But man, if you just go to fish, hang on, because when it's right, it's right.
And they're fun fish to catch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was the first time I'd ever caught bowfin, and they're sporty.
They are. And when they do get to cutting up and splashing, you're going to end up wet. Of course, the funniest thing to me was when the otter almost ran you over. I thought that was hilarious, but that was.
Of course, you're not thinking about that. And again, this was one of my first or earlier experiences with gators, and it's certainly the most gators I've ever seen in one spot. And I know at one point, I mean, I had like 15 of them around me at one time.
And not little ones either.
No, not little ones. But I did find, I mean, and I think it was the weather conditions, but it was a little bit cool.
Yes.
So they weren't really fired up. The ones that were really fired up were the ones that were like this big, and I can deal with that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They love to chase that lure. That top water was just fun. So
I'm heading down. I told you we're heading back down for our reservations. I got them. I'm heading back, but we generally like it when it's cooler. My favorite time is anytime from October on, and probably on into the end of April. After that, if you start getting into May, the worst thing down there you don't have to worry about. Even more than gators, I'd rather skinny dip with them gators than face the yellow flies. The yellow flies are what you do not want to face in the swamp. And starting in May all the way through to the end of September, you're going to deal with yellow flies down there. So that's one thing.
What's a yellow fly? Are they similar to a black fly? Or
yes, sir, they are. It's like a deer fly, but there are so many down there. You'll hear the woods humming, and if you hit any place bright sunlight, you're fine. But if you hit any place that's got shade in it, they're going to light you up. And when they land, they've got a pickaxe in one hand and a jackknife in the other, and they are taking a plug out of you. I mean, it's like, they are a spawn of Satan and evil all rolled into one, and there is nothing. They wade through 100% deep like it's a sauna. It's like fun to them. There's nothing that I know of that keep them off of you.
It's an appetizer to get to your flesh.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they are unbelievable. And you'll end up scarred, and I mean, you'll beat yourself to death trying to swat them. And the only thing down there that'll get them is the dragonflies. And I've had them actually come by and grab the yellow flies off my face mask, and you just see them flying out, ripping the wings off, and you hear them munching as they're going away. And you're saying, "Yes, you tear them up," Thank you.
Is it one of those where you just have to keep every bit of your body covered up and they still manage to get in there and drive you crazy?
Yes, sir. Every little opening. If you got your glasses on where your face mask, they'll get you all on the side of your glasses. And I mean, when they land, they're instant. It's a pain there is no doubt that you just got nailed by something. They are no fun.
But there's times of the year you can get down there, you don't have to deal with them at all?
No, you will not see one from October till the end of April. And I mean so all of your cold, most places down there actually roll up and close during the summer because they have a tornado type index, for F1 to F5. They've got a 1 to 10 bug index. And the first trip that we took down there like idiots was June 2nd. And I think the bug index was a 12 out of 10. And I mean, we left out of there with our tail tucked between our legs. And I got to admit, I don't get punked out of too many places, but that place I left with a fire behind me as fast as I possibly could. And we almost didn't go back, but I'm glad we.
I've never faced like that, but I have been to places where the no-see-ums or the skeeters were so bad that it's not that they were the pain, or it's just they started to drive you absolutely crazy.
Sir. We had to eat inside our face mask. We had, net face mask. You had to hold your sandwich inside it, to eat inside that face mask. Because if you open your mouth, the bugs were going in it. And I mean, and they were going to bite you wherever they landed. So it was definitely an intense adventure. But like I said, if you set it up from October till the end of April, and the beauty of it is the fall down there is unlike color, in the mountains. I mean, all the cypress trees turn, and then the tick seed sunflowers turn yellow. And I mean, it's so gorgeous. I've had to actually color correct my photos away from what it actually looked like because it was so bright. It was fake looking, but that's actually the way it looked,
Wow.
And then in the springtime, you'll have all the different blooming flowers. And of course the gators will be bellowing, turkeys are gobbling. And it's just I've seen, bears and everything else. And it's an amazing adventure no matter what time you go.
Definitely beautiful. Do you remember what time of year it was that we were on this?
It was April. I thought it was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I thought it was springtime.
I have no idea.
I see the posts when they come up, but I'm almost positive it was springtime.
Okay. Well, let's get this episode up and running.
This week on the Kayak Fishing Show, we are in Georgia at the Okefenokee.
Can you all hear it?
I got it.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself and drop us out of here.
All right.
And try to not get eaten by gators. Stick around. It's going to be a great show. Chris, you brought me down here to the swamp. You've been begging us to come to the swamp. What are we having for us here at the swamp and the Okefenokee?
Well, today we're going to paddle out on Billy's Lake. We're going to head down toward Minnie's Lake, which that confluence is one of my favorite places to fish. Hopefully we're going to chase some bowfin, maybe even a couple jacks, which is a pickerel here. Get to see probably more gators than most folks get to see in a lifetime on just a mile worth of paddle. But I'm so tickled that y'all could come and enjoy my swamp with me.
Let's go get it.
Let's do it.
Something that's very kind of cool is that we had a nice slow warm up to the gators. We had been told there's a lot of gators here, and so we started paddling out the first canal and saw one that was like, tiny. Oh, look, cute gator. And we paddled down a little bit more and see a little bit bigger. And then we saw one, then we saw two. And then at one point, I think I counted 15 gators around me, and some of them pretty substantial, but you got to ease into it.
Like that, they're no issue. Of course, I mean, if he's chasing the fish, they'll ruin your drawers, scaring you. But all they want is the fish. If you ever paddle up on a gator and he's got his head out of the water like that and he's raising his tail too, give that one the wide berth, because that's saying, I'm bad, I'm big, and this is my area.
There's like 5 of them right here.
This is the sign. It kind of shows you what's what direction to head. We're on Billy's Lake. To the right is Billy's Island, as you can see on the sign, and Minnie's Lake. That's where we're going to go fish today. But if you go to the left is the Suwannee River Sill, and that's actually the headwaters to the Suwannee River that runs 250 plus miles to the Gulf of Mexico. So this is where it all begins, right here. Bowfin would be the primary target species. Down here, they're called mudfish, blackfish. Over in Louisiana, they're called shoefish, a real aggressive fish that adapts well to poor water quality. Here, it's got like a pH of 4, so you won't find a lot of bass in the swamp, but the bowfin love that.
Here we go.
Awesome.
So there's a new species for me right there. I have never caught a bowfin. Big old long, powerful tail. Whoa! Little gator just took off right behind me. Powerful tail. Definitely got some teefies on him. Got that on that Sebile soft plastic swimmer. When I don't know what to throw, I will throw that because it just works. And they give you a little tussle, and that's a new species for me. I've never caught a bowfin, so pretty stoked on that. Surrounded by gators. That is, the whole thing you're thinking is like that thing splashing next to me as it gets close, kind of like we do with sharks. It's like when it gets close is when you really start worrying about the sharks, and when it gets close is when you start worrying about those gators. It hears that splashing, and it thinks it's going to get a free meal. So you want to land them kind of quick. This guy's coming to take a look at me. Get up in there. Got one, eh?
About time to get the skunk out of the boat.
Where'd you get that one on?
That worm.
Oh, you went back there?
They're hitting it. I'm just, jumping the gun on the hook set. Quick release. All right. All pressure's off.
I knew I would do it. I knew I would do that. Yeah, that introduction to the gators, and I remember that specifically. It's like we see that first one, and you're all enamored because it's like so exciting to see that first one, and then you just keep seeing more and more and more, and then you just get kind of used to it.
Yes, sir.
But you think about putting your feet in the water, which everybody always gives me grief for always putting my feet in the water. So you definitely think about that more in a place like that. Now, this just occurred to me while that gator part was up. Now, didn't you do a video about dealing with gators in the kayak?
Yes, sir, I did. And actually, for the park down there and for the wildlife refuge, they've released it. But I try to share it anytime folks ask about paddling with them. But it's one of them, which is it's kind of funny because it's about 80 pounds ago. So I look like the Great Pumpkin when I'm talking in my Yak Attack shirt. But I need to do another one so I don't have to look at myself like that anymore. But it's just one to kind of talk about, mainly like that display with the head out of the water and the tail out of the water. If you have one that's paying too much attention to you in a specific area, they've most likely been fed. You need to leave that gator. I mean, unfortunately somebody created that monster, and that's the ones that are dangerous. For the most part, gators, even down there, if you're there, because a gator has to have 87 to 88 degree body temperature to where he can actually digest food. So that's why in the cooler months they won't eat very much, and they're not a voracious predator at that time. I mean, you may find one eating, but they're not going to eat if it's not warm enough to digest that food. So I've literally I've had them caught fish right next to them, and they don't care. I've seen birds standing right next to them, they don't care. Deer swim across the water, they don't care. That same gator in May and June, you better watch out for him. And that's why I tend to keep the net, because when I'm pulling in a fish, if it's splashing next to the boat, it's ringing a dinner bell, and the gator are going to come. They're going to look for it. But primarily in breeding season, when the bulls are bellowing, you'll know when one's in the area because they'll be hollering and they'll be making noise. You want to watch out for them. Anytime you've got one, a female will case back and forth in front of an area that's hers. If she's got a nest in the area and you're paddling near that, you'll see her, she'll tack back and forth, and she's just saying, "This is mine, stay away." So I mean, if you got a gator acting like that, make sure you give them their berth. One other thing in the video is if you're paddling toward a gator, and if you watch him go under, he'll either back down, and if he backs down, he's staying right there. Just don't paddle over where he went under. If he's traveling and goes under, and just under the surface, he's traveling most likely in that same direction. So you don't want to keep going in that direction. Just aim toward his tail and go around him. That's the only time that you'll end up spooking them. Is if you paddle over one in shallow water, which is why I'm not afraid to tap my boat with the paddle once in a while. Probably the closest call I had down there, I was photographing a little blue heron drifting up in there really, really quiet, and drifted up next to a pile of grass, and my paddle slipped off my knee and bumped the boat. And when it did, about 7 great big old gators that were sitting in that grass launched off of it. And thankfully none of them launched into my boat, but it was I was in white water that was created by alligators. So you just gotta make enough noise down there that critters aren't surprised. You had that one that spooked out behind you, the same thing. If you drift into an area where the gators are, they're going to freak out. And unfortunately, if you're in the way, they're not trying to get you, they're trying to get away from you. And that's when people think he tried to chew my leg off. No, he was trying to get away from you. You just made it a little bit more dramatic than it should have been.
Right. Now I spooked a saltwater croc in Panama, and it came off. I was going up a small river, and it came off a bank. And in my head, it was coming off the bank right at me, but it went that way. But the scary part was just how quickly that thing just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And we're only in this deep of water, and all of a sudden that thing's just gone. It's like, well, okay, where'd he go?
I was fighting a bowfin down there one day, and I'd seen a father and son behind me in a john boat, and I could hear water running, and I just assumed it was them with the trolling motor on high. And all of a sudden he hollers, "Gator coming, gator coming." And I'm in a OG Kilroy, and I put the paddle against my chest and pulled. And as soon as I turned, I see 12-foot of gator coming toward that 12-foot boat. And he had white water shooting out both sides of his face where he was planed coming at me. Well, as soon as he got within a paddle distance of the boat and just laid on the brakes and stopped. And I've got a picture of him looking at me. You can see my reflection in his eyes. And but I flipped that bowfin up and hung him between my knees, which they have teeth, so it's kind of funny that I had a toothy critter that I'm trying to protect from another toothy critter But that gator stayed with me. I had to paddle, and he cased beside me the whole time until I could finally unhook that fish and threw it far enough away. And he saw the fish leave. Once he realized it was no longer a food source, he left. But the whole time I had the fish, he wanted it. And that's unfortunate that people do that. They do that and they create the problem. And a fed gator, not only is it a danger to you, but most likely a fed gator will be removed and euthanized because of that.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's keep this thing going.
All right.
Hey y'all, I'm Chris Funk. We're down here in the Okefenokee Swamp, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, actually. The Okefenokee Swamp is just over our shoulder, and this is one of my favorite places on earth.
Chris has been asking us to come down and come fishing with him down here in the swamp for a few years. And I tell you, man, it is a special place.
It is so beautiful with the cypress trees and the lily pads and the black water. On top of it all, the fishing is pretty daggum awesome, so that's just like gravy to me.
The cabin we've got and the campground is 100 yards from where we were able to launch the kayaks. And, get up in here and seeing all these birds and gators and seeing Chris catch all these fish. It's a pretty cool place.
It's all a learning process. I'm a slower learner than most.
These fish are pretty aggressive and kind of territorial. They're hanging in one spot. So if you do hit one and miss it, you usually get a couple more shots at it. Here you go. Came back. Oh! That was a nice sized fish.
There he is, Will. Look at, he won't even give him a dang worm back. Give him a worm back. We just got to find his mama. And they're really a beautiful fish. When they get their mating colors, they'll get a big old black spot back here. Some of them will turn almost an emerald green. I mean, folks don't give enough credit to these. They are not a trash fish. They are a blast to catch. Slicker now snot on a wet limb. Vaseline on a banana peel. Thank you, little feller. All right. Good deal. Let's go get his mama.
They can certainly cover some water when they want to, right?
Yes, sir. And ground. They,
Yeah.
get on dry ground. When they raise their body up off the ground and walk on all fours up, they can catch a dog in a straightaway. Number one is this red worm, the red shed worm. I can get it in the pads. I can flip it back in the thick stuff. That fish actually came right beside the boat, just over in a hole in the pads. Number two would definitely be something flashy, spinnerbait. And spinnerbait, you don't chunk and wind like you do when you bass fish. You literally just drag it along the bottom. But the cool thing with the spinnerbaits is when they hit it, they have it. My third thing is a black and blue buzzbait. Now, if I'm fishing a place where I can throw that buzzbait, you'll see the fish come up, chasing it a little bit. All you do is slow that buzzbait down to where the blades are barely on the surface, and that fish will come up there and grab it. And 99% of the time on the spinnerbait or the buzzbait, you'll hook up. Now, the worm, it's about 25% of the time they kill it, and they hold it in their mouth, and they'll swim with it forever. So when you hook them, you miss a lot of them, but still, hey, at least you get to set the hook bunch.
What's it like our pipe? I mean, like the Canada pipe?
Yes, sir. They look exactly.
Oh, yeah,
so it's
I'm pausing that just for a second because that kind of frames up. I wanted to ask you about that. What is that contraption you have behind you, Chris?
Oh, that's the Yak Attack command stand, and they are designed to go in front of you, just like a stand-up bar, and for a paddle holder and rod holder. But I have, ever since I saw that, when I first saw it, I said that is the single greatest camera arm I have ever seen in my life. And I have since outfitted every boat that I have ever bought with another set of rig and gear behind me, so that I can use that arm behind me. And that's all I do is reach back. I've got a clamp mount on my GoPro, and I can clamp it right over my shoulder, grab it, do whatever I need to, film it in the water, film it in the net, reach right back up there, clamp it back up. It's easy to get to. It does an over the shoulder shot for me, and every video I've ever done is filmed on that bar.
It looks to me like it'd give you a more stable shot.
Yes,
than
sir.
one of those arms that can tend to kind of bounce a little bit.
Yes, sir. And it's a lot of options. I mean, but I can move that little dog leg out. I can lower it. I can do a lower shot. I can do a higher shot. And the thing is, it's rock solid in every position. And then on the left side, you see I've got the mount where I can just set my net in it. It works out pretty good there. But there's a lot of options that you can add to that bar if you wanted to. I just run it plain Jane and just use that clamp mount, and it's hard to beat that thing for me.
Oh, that's cool. We've got a couple of comments. May as well hit them while we're paused. Bottom line, Bassin, watching it on Kayak Fishing Tales, says he spent a lot of time in the Okefenokee, never had any issues with gators. Suwannee Canal was different because fishermen would feed them mudfish, so they would follow you around. Now, mudfish is what you were calling bowfin?
Yes, sir. They're called mudfish, blackfish, bowfin, grinnell, shoepick. Some probably names that you can't pronounce on screen because somebody's being ugly about them. But I do not consider them a trash fish at all. That fish to me is an indicator of a healthy environment, and they are just an incredible prehistoric predator, and actually good to eat, believe it or not. In that cold water from the swamp, we usually one trip or one day out of our trips when we go down, we'll try to do one bowfin fry. And that's always a treat for us, and we love it. And then we release the rest of them. But it's surprising that a fish that's not that pretty tastes that good.
How big do they get?
I think the world record, or I know the state record in Georgia, which I think is also the world record. Don't hold me to that, but it's over 19 pounds. I know that Matt from Jackson caught when we were down there was 30 inches long. The one trip with me, him, and Bridget, I know of, I think 4 different fish that were 30 inches long caught on that trip. And, that fish is probably in the 12 to 14 pounds. Yes, sir. Back in
got to be a handful, man.
It was caught exactly where the one good picture of you standing fighting that one that had that giant gator behind you. I mean, that was probably a 13-foot gator in that back hole on the back side of the Suwannee Sill. Was exactly where all those big fish were caught. And believe it or not, that gator stayed in that hole for probably the next 2 or 3 years. I saw that monster gator in that same hole every time I was back there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. Keenan Moore says, Jim, I was told you fished a secret lake in Quebec. I fished this lake and was hoping to watch the episode. Any chance you know what I'm talking about? There's a lot of secret lakes. I'm pretty sure I know what one you're talking about.
Loose lips sink ships. Remember that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if I've already aired that episode or not. I'll have to. That might be in the next season 9 because this is season 8 right here. I think that might be season 9. And Keenan says, I had a giant smallmouth. That's the one that you go up to Canada, man. I mean, and I say it all the time. I love fishing up in Canada. And the smallmouth fishing up there can be so good. I'm not a big freshwater guy for the most part. I like the saltwater stuff. But smallmouth just give you an appreciation. There's and too. I mean, they give you a tussle.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and here we have shoal bass, which are kind of like a southern smallmouth. I mean, but the smallmouth and a shoal bass, if you could tie them to a largemouth backwards, he'd drag a largemouth till he's dead. And I mean, just that's how strong they are. I think my top smallmouth might be 18 inches long and was caught right there at the Jackson factory. So I'm hoping one day to get up there on one of them northern shoots and chase some of them footballs that they have up there. One of these days I'll make it.
that, and lots of those pike. And
Yes, sir.
Canada's a great place to fish. I've been lucky to have fished a lot of different places. Anyway, let's get this episode back to rolling.
All right.
It's a cousin, but it's a chain pickle. This is a chain pickle down here called Jack. Voracious on the topwater bait. I mean, that's these are ones we used to catch on the buzz bait on the other side on the Swan. And fine eating critter if you know how to clean them. They get 4 fillets of live bone. But Jeff, you can see there. Yeah, they got those. Yeah, they do. Thanks, Patty. All right. Snot rockets, what they ought to call. There you go. And when they go down with that head flat like that, it usually just sort of goes, they'll change direction and ease on out there. Sometimes they'll just lay right there.
He's got a dragonfly on top of each eye. It looks like he's got eyelashes. Oh!
Well, like I said, it takes a little while to get used to paddling around all those gators. It's like people are afraid of sharks, and I don't have an issue with sharks.
Right. And that's, when you go down there and just experience it from the start, and just go kind of soft start, ease yourself into it. By the time you see your 50th gator, you're like, maybe they ain't so bad.
Yeah. They said you just stop thinking about them, but you definitely kept your feet in the boat.
Yes, sir.
Gators and pulling on bowfin, having a great time. So far, Chris is kind of schooling me, but I've had some bites. I just haven't getting the fish as many to stick. And lots of gators. Lots of gators.
You can plainly see we've been around hundreds of alligators. And I mean, up to the size of the 12-foot boat, that we're paddling. So there's, hold on, let me get this fish. Oh, it's come off. But I mean, it's a safe place to paddle. All you got to do is realize that this is the wild. I mean, give them respect, give them space. It's an awesome place. I've been coming here for 10 years, and I have yet to have an incident. I don't know if anybody's had an incident, and I love paddling with these creeks. All right, well, I reckon if you miss a fish in the same hole 3 times, y'all be out. 3 strikes are out.
Going?
Yes, sir. We had one messed up and held on to it long enough to get a hook in, but what folks don't realize, I don't know how well you can hear that, that is all bone, and they are extremely difficult to get a hook into. The hook has to find a spot behind the lip, just somewhere for it to get some purchase to get hooked in. Well, this one messed up and found that spot. Thank you, little rascal. That one hung in there. You can find something bigger enough you have to use the net on, but at least that one stayed on.
Get the little ones up.
I know. I'm trying to find bigger ones. I think the big ones are the ones I'm missing. The mouths are too big.
Where's that croc?
You're good right now.
Woo, it's been a while. Yeah, some work in this edge, trying to get into little pockets. The fishing just shut off for a couple hours. I mean, went from getting bites and funk landing a bunch, and then it just shut off. There it went. Oh, we got a bunch of gators around, yeah. And they all start looking at you when they hear the splashing of that fish. It's like, you want to get them up fast.
Oh, that's a better fish. No, come on. Yeah, that's what we've been hunting for right there. No, it ain't dinner time. Grown up gator hunting something to eat. They're getting a little bit better. They're getting a little bit better. That one was sitting right in front of a pretty good sized gator. They thought he was fixing to get lunch. Thankfully, we had the net to get him out of the water quick.
Sweet, dude.
Man.
Oh,
That real pretty one.
right along the edge here. This one's again on the soft swimmer. This guy inhaled it. All right, well, that pretty much wraps up our day, our first day here on the Okefenokee Swamp with our buddy Chris. We've had a great time, caught a few fish, saw a lot of gators, and absolutely beautiful day. So let's get this last one back in the water, and we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, bright and early. So. Welcome back to Kayak Fishing
I'm
Show.
gonna pause that for 1 second. I don't remember because I haven't watched this episode in forever. About the location we were at. I mean, it was pretty cool. You camped, and I think Will and I were in a cabin, as I recall.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was Stephen C. Foster State Park there in Fargo, Georgia. And actually, this spring when I took my bride over there, we stayed in the exact cabin that y'all were in as well. But that they've got really nice cabins there. It's a full RV camp hookup or tents, and we usually tent camp when I go down there. But it's a pretty neat little park. The thing is, and y'all learn to be 100% prepared when you go in there because it's a long ride out.
I totally forgot about that.
Which now there's a Dollar General Deluxe at the end of the road, at 18-mile road. There's at least you can get bread and milk and stuff like that. You don't have to have your gas station hot dogs and coffee and bacon no more.
I had totally forgotten about because we'd stop at a store on the way, and all of a sudden we get on this road to nowhere, and the only thing we come across is that gas station.
Yeah.
And it has I don't know if you could find. I mean, if you rate hot dogs from 1 being the worst to 10 being the best. These were a -5.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't know if you could go that bad in a hot dog, but they were terrible. And they had nothing name brand in this gas station. It was horrible. I mean, we made do.
Yes,
but yeah, definitely learned our lesson. If you're going to head down there,
stock prepared. Yes.
Be prepared.
On the Okefenokee Swamp, we're at the headwaters of the Suwannee River. Trying a little bit of different piece of water than we hit yesterday. Still here with our good buddy, Mr. Chris Funk. We're out here to have a good time, chasing gators, chasing fish, have some fun. Yeah, awesome. There we go.
Good deal.
The old soft-matted swimmer again.
Got the skunk out of the trip both days, so.
I give that first punching on the fight, and then he moves up on me.
It's hard to be a great folks.
Trying to give you a lap dance.
My primary setup that I've been using here on the Okefenokee Swamp for these bowfin is a 7'7" Century Vectura rod. This is an acid-wrapped bait casting rod. Great sensitivity, great power. Low profile reel. On that reel, I have it loaded with Kansan 30-pound braid. Straight tide. This water is very dark, so you don't really need the fluorocarbon. So we're just going straight tide with a 30-pound Kansan braid.
My go-to lure, Sabile Soft Magic Swimmer. This is the medium-sized one, and that's been doing the job on all the fish I've got.
Heck no, it ain't a fast fish. Old Fox skunk was strong today, wasn't it?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes. That's a good get back on the red worm, huh?
Yes, sir.
Right out the middle.
Right smack in the middle. Oh, come on. About time.
That's a good fish.
I was beginning to think I had to go back to 098 fishing class. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good deal. Good deal.
Oh, that's a nice one. Good deal. Oh, came off.
Yeah, typical. Playing with a GoPro. Loose fish.
Yes, sir.
The kayak I've been using on this trip is the Jackson Kayak Mayfly. I've got it rigged up with my Raymarine Dragonfly 7 Pro, which is really nice to help us find the channels. We fished in a lot of areas that were really tight, but then we got to this open area. So having the power pole in some of the windy conditions was really nice, but I didn't really want to have it in some of the more covered area. So the nice thing is it's really easy to secure that power pole down in the rod holder and along the side of the boat. So have the pole down the side when we're doing the covered areas, then once it got to the open area, slapped it in the back, and it was awesome. The windy conditions keep letting me hold place and really work an area real thoroughly.
Oh, quick release. Good bass.
That is a bass.
How about that? Very cool.
Got a bass. First, I thought I had a stick because there was just pressure, but it was very minimal, like it was just swimming straight at me.
Very, very basic markings going that way. And one of the locals told us, he said, yeah, you go back that way, you can make it back to the seal. And about a mile into it, you're thinking, okay, we just got set up. Do I hear banjos out here? But it is just a gorgeous, wild place to paddle.
Brother, can't thank you enough, man. What an awesome trip. You brag about this place. You've been telling us we had to come. What a special. I can see why you kept saying what a special place this is.
Man, I'm so tickled that y'all got to come and see it. You know, the weather cooperated for us, fish cooperated for us, and I, you know, it just tickles me to be able to share this with others. And you're right. I probably talked way too much about it to get you here, but I'm thankful that y'all showed up.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, I was saying the other day, it's like, even if you weren't fishing, just to be able to paddle in this place. What a beautiful place to go paddle.
Yes, sir. And it's between the gators, the scenery, the bird life, and you know, later on in the warmer months when all the flora and fauna starts blooming and running around, it's an amazing place. It really is.
Well, thanks again, brother.
Glad to have y'all.
We'll have to do it again.
Let's do it. Man, that brings back good memories right there.
Yeah, for sure. Let me it automatically starts playing the next episode. Yeah, what a great trip. And I mean, like I said, I don't sit around and watch my TV show. So, you know, to go back and watch these and get those memories. And I mean, that last section, I actually can totally remember fishing along that bank.
Mm-hmm.
And having to drop the power pole to keep me in position because it just got a little bit breezy going right down the river there. And
that's the seal side. That's where they actually tried to drain the swamp back to, you know, to turn it into commercial property. And so that's where man tried to destroy that place. And thankfully it wasn't successful. The swamp won. So now they just use it for level control and flood control. And this year the water's been so high, back on that chute, it was probably at 112 feet on the gauge, and right now it's at 121, which means that entire basin would have been full of water all the way up into those stumps beside us. And that's where the fishing is more difficult because the fish have more places to go.
Right,
So,
right. I've run into trips like that down in Brazil, high water, and all those peacock bass just
yeah, sure.
got too many.
You can hear them flopping back. You'll hear them, but there's no way to get to them. I mean, you can't get to them.
I just want to get a cast in there.
Yes.
And even if you could get a cast in there, they hit and immediately break you off.
Right.
Around the next tree. Louis D says, I love the show, brother. Thanks, Louis. I appreciate you watching, man. And David Devine says, great looking spot. Yeah, like I said, and I mean this to the bottom of my heart. I mean, if we weren't fishing, just being able to paddle through that area and to see everything that we saw it's a phenomenal place just to go and to be in nature.
Yes, sir. And it's a new every time I go. I mean, it's the in the springtime I there's a little bitty bird called a prothonotary warbler that I've chased and have finally gotten down there to take photos of. It's a gorgeous little yellow bird. And it's hard to believe that somebody would drive 4 hours to take a picture of one bird. But I mean, when I saw that was my triumph. And this past year, I actually got a really good photo of a bear down there. And I mean, I'm always either a day late, dollar short, but I just happened to be in the right spot at the right time and saw the bear. So it's a new experience every time I go. And it's always, I've seen the water high. I've seen it so low that I actually walked the boats up that area where you and I paddled. I just hooked into my belt and walked up it. Of course you had to watch out for gators the whole way, but it was easier to wade it than it was to paddle it. But every time I hit a deep hole, I just get back in it and start fishing. And every experience there is neat. And then when you get into the history of it as well, for those that are history buffs, if you read anything about, the men and women that helped to restore the swamp, and first the ones that tried to destroy the swamp, and then second off the ones that restored the swamp and how it became to be a wildlife refuge, all that history is amazing. And even to Billy, who's Billy's Lake and Billy's Island was named after a Seminole Indian chief. I mean, there's so much history in that area, and the people that lived well into our day and age of modern stuff, they were living using the swamp and the medicines that came from it, the food and everything that came from it. And it's just amazing that people could subsist and thrive in that area and live there for so long. And I love everything about it. Like I said, we ain't got enough time for me to talk about everything I like about the swamp.
Yeah, it's amazing when you get to a place that's that kind of a harsh environment, and you think about people lived here on purpose.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's amazing. But we're kind of running over a little bit, but I'm enjoying it, so I don't care. So we got bowfin, you got the pickerel. How often do you catch bass in there? I mean, I did catch
that's rare. I mean, you caught a treat. You caught the unicorn, and especially in low water now, and that's because of that pH of that water, which is about 4. You don't usually see bass in the swamp. Up to the one high water experience, I think I'd only caught 3 in my entire set of visiting, and then Jameson and I went down there and absolutely wore them out one time. I think I caught 10 in a day. That was just unbelievable on that one trip. But for the most part, that is not a spot that you go to chase bass. Now, if you go downstream in the Suwannee, there's some excellent bass fishing downstream of the swamp, but not right there in the swamp where we were fishing. So you definitely caught the rarest fish of the trip there. And of course also warmouth, which is a panfish, but that's another one that I target a whole lot. And since you and I were down there, we learned to use the Ned rigs, which the Ned rig, especially rigged with a little crawfish, is deadly on the warmouth, which are can be as big as your hand and probably 1.5 inches thick. They make a great little fillet. They're one that if we go down there targeting something to eat, we'll try to catch up a mess of them. But they're a lot of fun to target. They get around the stumps.
That fish.
It looks like a crappie and a bluegill did the ugly. They've got a big mouth and a bluegill type body, but they're super thick and they're a gorgeous fish. A lot of colors mixed into their scales along with the brown that's on them. The flyer is another species that's down there, and that one is looks like a bluegill, but he's got a huge dorsal and caudal fin. So they look more like a crappie on their fins, but a bluegill on their body, and that's another fun one to chase. And then always the little black bullheads, which is probably the tastiest catfish that swims to me. And I think it has something to do with that tannic acid water. But, they're just a really sweet, tasting, excellent eating fish. But there's always something to chase. You just got to figure out where to do it and what to do it on.
So bowfin are native?
Yes, sir.
What is the difference between a bowfin and a snakehead? Because they sure look alike.
They look a whole lot alike, and it has to do with the way the dorsal fins actually are connected on a bowfin and on a snakehead. I think on a snakehead they're separated, where on a bowfin they go all the way from front to back. And of course, bowfin are native, and they are not one that's going to destroy any ecosystem. I know, unfortunately, you ignorant rednecks, which, hey, I'm a redneck. I don't want to offend anybody on your show, but ignorant folks want to catch them, throw them up on the bank. But man, that fish is one that's going to survive in an area that's not the best. So, I mean, if you're losing bowfin in an area, you better think seriously about the environment that you're turning loose, because that fish is going to be your last indicator that you've got something going wrong. Because they can also gulp air. I'm sure we saw it when we were down there. They'll come up and just gulp air. So you can have an area that they literally lose all the oxygen in, and that fish will live. That fish will survive.
They're kind of prehistoric.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And very cool. I mean, when they, if you can ever get down there when they're hitting on the surface on that black and blue buzz bait, oh, it's more fun than you can have with your clothes on. I promise you.
It's nothing better than top water. Mark Roberto says, what company makes your sit-on seat in the Jackson Kayak? Jackson Kayak.
Yes.
Yeah, Jackson Kayak has all their own seats made. So, I mean, everything on Jackson Kayak is pretty much used to be made in the USA. Now they've gone outside a little bit because they have to, but it's just nice that they keep continuing to make some new boats. I know there's another new boat that's going to be out soon that I'm really excited about. We were not allowed to talk about it, but Chris, one more time, if people want to see these videos we talked about, how are people going to see that? Is that on YouTube?
Yes, sir. My stuff's on Chris Funk, the Feral One, on YouTube, and it's just me. So just look for. It's actually probably, I think it's a bloody tomahawk is my avatar. So if you see a tomahawk's got blood on it, that's me. But it's Chris Funk, the Feral One. I'm not very easy to miss.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of informative stuff, a lot of funny stuff. I mean, if you get there, hang out with Chris Funk, you end up with a lot of, we call them the funkisms, and you may have heard a couple of them in there. Always a pleasure, Chris. I sure appreciate you taking the time. I know it was super last minute, and I'm just glad that this could pull together, man.
Man, great to talk with you, and can't wait to share the water with you again sometime soon. You take care of that shoulder, all right?
All right, buddy. You take care, and best to the wife and family, and
yes,
see you soon.
Take care now.
Well, that was fun. Like I said, fishing with Chris is always a blast. Remembering a great trip with him like that, always a blast. We'll be back on Thursday if I can. I'll be showing one of the older episodes back from when we were the Ocean Kayak, and Tuesday is the days that we showed the Jackson Kayak years. I believe next week is we did a trip to Virginia and visit the Yak Attack facility. And then the following week, we visit Siegler Reels and kind of do a how it's made kind of deal. So I appreciate you all joining us. And if you can just do us that favor, give us those thumbs up and share these things with your friends. I really appreciate it. If you are going out on the water, please remember, always wear your PFD and keep your paddle right side up. Y'all take care.